Welcome to Homebuyer Hotspot. So if you're thinking about buying a home in Florida, you're probably hearing lots of noise about rates, noise about inventory, about insurance. But what's really happening and how do buyers still win in today's market? That's what my friend Alyssa is going to let us know today. And today we're breaking down what is really going on straight from someone who's in the trenches in the Florida real estate industry every single day. But before we go into this podcast, make sure that you like, that you share, that you subscribe. It really helps us to reach more buyers. I'm Jennifer Fanning, and I am a cross-country mortgage lender. I've been in the industry for over 10 years, and my passion is really helping that self-employed borrower. My guest today is Alyssa. And Alyssa, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us how you got into real estate?
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So my name is Alyssa. I live in the Treasure Coast, so it's the east side of Florida, and I service everywhere from the Vero Beach area all the way down to Broward, so like a little south of Fort Lauderdale. Born and raised in South Florida. I'm a Florida girl through and through. And I'm also a fire wife, so I'm big with like first responders. I love the first time home buyers relocating. I just like anybody really. I'll help because that's what we do in real estate, right? Like we're here to help people.
We
Um,
are.
and I think it's been a passion of mine since I was a kid. And it's just something I dove into 3 years ago, got my license, went full time, quit my corporate job and never looked back. And it's been honestly the greatest thing ever.
So many of us have that exact same story of quit our corporate job and didn't look back. Yeah, which is super exciting. Good for you.
It's
Good for
great.
you. And your husband is a fireman, so that puts you
Yes.
like in that whole public service sector. So this actually kind of fits nicely in with that, right?
Yes. And I have a hospitality background. That's what I did in my past life. And
Okay.
I did
Yeah.
high-end luxury hotels with food and
Okay.
beverage in the restaurant industry. So
Nice.
I've always been servicing
Right.
people in some capacity. So
Right. Yeah. So you're used to that whole customer service and giving everybody the best experience.
yeah.
So what are you seeing on the ground right now with buyers in Florida? Since you're a Florida native, I meet very few of you.
Yeah.
There's not that many of you because most of us are transplants from somewhere. So
Yeah.
what are you seeing right now in your area of Florida? Because I know all the different pockets have different scenarios, different things happening, in the industry. But what's happening? What are you seeing on the ground?
Well, first and foremost, the market is not dead. The market is not
No,
dying.
I
And
agree.
I just want to debunk that right now. For me in the Treasure Coast, because there's so much land and so much building,
Yes.
there's so much opportunity. Whereas like down south in like the Palm Beach or Broward area, everything's pretty much built up. So there's so much new growth up here, especially in the Port St. Lucie, Vero Beach area. Even where I'm in Palm City out west, there's really nothing out. So like things are starting to develop and new communities are popping up. And I think buyers are still hesitant. Obviously, interest rates are fluctuating. But I think at the end of the
They're on
day,
their way. They're inching their way down.
yeah, and I think at the end of the day, if you have to move and you can afford to move and you find that home that like excites you, buyers are still out there. I just did an open house this weekend. I had 10 families come through in a 3-hour span, which is
That's
pretty
great.
unbelievable, especially
Yeah.
in this market. But buyers are out there. So for everyone who thinks that the market's dead, it's not, especially,
So everybody listening, the market is not dead in Florida. People are still buying and selling.
yes, and I think depending on, buyers have negotiation power. I think that's something always depending on the home. And I get buyers asking me all the time, can I negotiate? I'm like, everything's negotiable. And if a house is listed properly and priced properly, that's going to reflect on how much negotiating power we have.
I
So, and at the end
agree.
of the day, my motto is sellers have a bottom, just like buyers have a top. And we have to kind of integrate that and do like a matchmaking type of thing, right? And make sure we're all in agreement.
Percent. That's why I really work closely with my buyers on the mortgage side where I'm running numbers. And sometimes they come to me like one of my clients that I'm working with right now. They made an offer on the property and the seller really wanted $15,000 more. And my buyers were tempted to say no. And I'm like, wait a minute. let's run the numbers. What is $15,000 in your payment? It literally was like $40. He said, do you love this house enough to pay $40 more a month for it? And they looked
Right.
at each other. They were like, yes, 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 it's worth the $40 a month. I think people in their minds think, oh, 15,000 or whatever, that it's a much
Yeah.
bigger number, as far as monthly payment than it really is.
Well, I think,
Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I think too, with buyers, people get so stuck on a home price, right? And they don't look at what everyone looks at is your monthly. So if you're monthly, you have a little more wiggle room. You can go up on the price or you can do a little bit more. So people don't get
100%.
picked so much on that purchase price because at the end of the day, you know,
Right.
it might be a little bit better.
That's right. Well, and even the buyers who are the move up buyers, I hear a lot of move up buyers say, oh, but I just can't get rid of my 3% interest rate. And I
Yeah.
look at them and I'm like, you can't, I did. And then they look at me like I have three heads. And I said, yeah, I moved from South Florida and I had a beautiful little 3% interest rate, 2.99 actually. And I said, and then we looked at moving to Northern Florida. I said, so I had to sell. I could have rented that property down there, but I didn't want to rent it. And so by the time we sold that property, made the money, had our cash to move to our new property, we bought a year ago up here, and my interest rate was a little bit over 7%. My payment is actually less than my payment was at my 3% interest rate because I had so much more equity to
Correct.
move
Yeah.
forward to the new property. So there's a lot of things that people sometimes just are not looking at, and that's why they need to consult a realtor like yourself, a mortgage lender like myself, to really understand and know what the numbers are. Now, Alyssa, if somebody wanted to contact you, how should they contact you?
My phone is on me all the time. So I would
Okay.
say text is the easiest, right? Because if I'm
Okay.
out or on a call, but we can leave my number, my email, Instagram, any kind of communication I will answer. So
Perfect. Perfect. So I'll make sure that I put that on the video for everybody so that they can reach out to you then. So
absolutely.
is the market still, so I know we've been talking about, people's perception is that Florida's market is dead, but are we still seeing a little bit of competition out there, or where's that really at as far as multiple offers? Nobody's looking, like what's really happening there?
So I just had this scenario in a listing in Port St. Lucie. We had multiple offers, over asking offers in 3 days of being on the market because it was priced appropriately, right? It was priced.
That's
We,
the
yeah.
key word. Yeah. So you did your job and educated your sellers
Mhm.
and you price it appropriately and you had multiple offers.
Yep, we had 5 offers in 3 days. So
Excellent.
it
So
was
where
it was
did
a
you end? Where did you land in the end? Did they get more than they had it listed for?
yes. Even with seller concessions, they ended up having a little bit more over asking, so it was pretty awesome.
That is very awesome. Good job. Good job.
Thank
I did that. We sold a rental property that we had down south, and the realtor that I used, that's his strategy, is let's list a little bit below
mhm.
market value to really drive interest. We had 100 people through that property a year ago
Wow.
when things were a little bit slower than they are now. We literally had 100 people through that property in a weekend. And then we sold it above listing. We sold it exactly where we knew we were probably going to sell it. But had we have listed where we knew we would sell it, I think it would have been a much slower sell.
Yeah. And that's
So
I go into listing appointments all the time and I will tell I've walked away from listings because we don't see eye to eye. And my thing is I don't list a house to list a house. I list a house to sell. And I
correct.
think in the last 3 listings I've had gotten under contract within 21 days, which in this market is pretty good,
That's
and
excellent because most I see are on the market between 90, 120 days. I don't know
yeah,
what the
90 is
official
about
NAR.
average.
Yeah, the NAR numbers are 90 days is the average. Okay.
Mhm.
But that's smart. I mean, and if you're educating your sellers that, hey, here's the price if you really want to move on.
Yeah,
If we list it where you want to list it, you might be on the market for 6 months.
right.
And I literally have seen properties be on the market for a year just because the seller has a number in their head that's not really valid. And had the sellers have listened to the realtor in the beginning, they would have made more money than, a year on the market than everybody thinks they can super lowball you. And I mean, the house still isn't sold. So my guess is they will probably make less than they
Right.
originally would have a year ago. Now, insurance in Florida is a big deal. So how
Yeah.
are higher insurance costs? Like, how do you have that conversation with your first time home buyers? Like, how does that go? What do you tell people?
So when it comes to insurance, obviously, let's go back to the most important part of the deal, right? Is once you get under contract, you have that inspection period. I always ask before we even get an offer accepted, do you
Mm-hmm.
have an insurance person? Do you have someone to go to? Because as
Yeah.
soon as we get executed, I make sure they start shopping within that period to start getting quotes. Because a lot of the times with insurance being so
Mm-hmm.
high, it'll bump them out of their DTI or the amount
Mm-hmm.
that they're comfortable with monthly.
Correct.
And I think it's super important. You look at the big picture, right? It's not just your mortgage, it's your mortgage, your insurance, your HOA, your taxes, like
Yep.
everything's
The
in
whole
one
enchilada.
picture. But I think it's important to also educate buyers as far as how homes are structured, right? Like, hey, your insurance is going to be a little higher with wood frame versus CBS,
Correct.
or impact windows. Why is it important to have a full complete set or with
Not
shutter?
just one or two.
Correct. So and I had this recently with a buyer where it was a significant difference with insurance. And I believe the first quote was about 14,000. If he were
Wow.
to have,
Holy smokes.
and if it were to have been completely impact, it would have dropped down to 8. So it was almost double because the whole home was not.
Yeah.
Now, there's options, right? You can purchase the home, get the insurance, fix the windows, redo the insurance and fix it.
Yes.
But insurance is a big thing. The roofs and the windows are the two biggest things I see
I agree.
with insurance nowadays.
I 100% agree. That was my biggest thing when we moved up north is I was surprised as to how different the insurance premiums are once you get north of the Treasure Coast.
Yeah,
But Treasure Coast South is definitely some higher premiums in there. And I've seen some people really be shocked, that are looking at houses. And that's what I always tell them. I'm giving you a potential payment on a what if scenario on a house, but we really don't know until you go and get that quote from the insurance agent. So I do the same thing you do, which is have them get it as soon as possible while we're still in that inspection period. So then that way they're able to make a good educated decision for themselves.
absolutely. And one thing too to that is I had someone come into an open house this weekend
Hmm.
and ask me what the insurance was because he had seen online that it was X amount.
Right.
And my viewpoint is I take myself as an example. My neighbor and I have the exact same house, same
Ah,
model, except she has a pool and I don't. Long story short, her insurance was like a quarter of what I was paying in the beginning when we moved here. So you can have the same home, same build time, same
right.
age, but depending on what your insurance, who your carrier is, how much of the dwelling you want, like,
Covered.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, and if you have like furs and jewels and,
So
different things.
it's so different. So I tell people that it really depends on what I know people who just want bare minimum just to satisfy the insurance of,
Yeah.
because when you have a mortgage, you have to have the insurance. So I
Yes.
think it just depends, on where people
What
are
you want.
comfortable with. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So what surprises out of state buyers the most when they come to Florida and decide to purchase?
Oof. I would have to say the hurricane, things with the hurricane. That's the most I would say out of all of the, I would say, transplants, right, from out of state that I had dealt with. They're obviously excited about the weather. There's no snow, all that. It's mainly the hurricanes. It's what do we do? How do we prepare? And I pretty much will I try to send out emails right before hurricane season to kind of like, hey, for those of you not knowing, this is what
Yeah.
you can
This is what
do.
we do in Florida.
Yeah. Tropical
Yeah.
storms, yeah, that's no big deal, type
Correct.
of thing. Like you're good. Don't panic.
Yeah.
I would say that, and then the way our construction is very different from up north. So,
Yes. Very different.
so I think that's a learning thing. It's nothing good or
Mhm.
bad, and it's more of just they're not unaware of how our building codes are.
Correct. I agree. When I first moved to Florida, it was, I was used to wood frame houses. So
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that there was a difference in insurance premiums between wood frame and block built. There's a lot of different things that you just don't know. So I think that that's why it's so important to pick somebody who really understands Florida insurance and Florida building codes and all of that kind of stuff. So do you think that the flood zones, are people concerned about flood zones? Because that's kind of some big stuff now.
That is, and I actually just closed a deal where the flood zone, we talked about that because it's Florida, right? Like we have water all around us unless you're
All
dead
around us.
smack in the middle of like,
Mhm.
central Florida. But I think, listen, it's FEMA, right? So FEMA can
Mhm.
change it. They can change it whenever they want. So again, putting myself as an example, I live on about an acre
Okay.
of land. I have a quarter of my backyard is considered a flood zone. Out of the whole
Really?
property, just the back corner of my house was
Huh.
considered a flood. So we
Okay.
get flood insurance. But again, it can change. So that's why I
Hmm.
tell clients as well. Like,
Yeah.
listen, you might have it today, you might not have it today, and in a year they're going to change it, and you're now in a flood
Correct.
zone. The good news is, out of all the insurance, I feel that the flood is not as
Well,
expensive.
and it's the cheapest. It's the cheapest. Like when I lived down south, I had to have flood insurance and it was $500-600 a year,
Yeah, that's what we
which,
pay for ours, and it's not.
$500 or $600, it's still more money, but it's still not, it doesn't
It's not
break the bank typically.
correct. We lived on the water in Pompano Beach, and
Yeah.
we had to have flood insurance because we were right there. But
Yep.
yeah, that's a big thing.
Now, what about, so Florida is known for our HOAs. So, so how do you help navigate that? Because that's a hard thing sometimes for me when I'm having that conversation with buyers
Right.
is sometimes I tell them your maximum payment is this. Don't think about like that you can buy 400,000 or 300,000 the purchase price. It's your maximum payment because HOAs vary so much in different communities. And people that are coming here from other states, they don't understand. Or if you're moving from the center of Florida to the coast, I feel like the coasts have even more HOAs, than the center does. And so how do
Yes.
you kind of help people navigate that? Because there's some different rules and nuances and, some different things happening with the HOAs.
So when it comes to HOAs, that's one of the first questions when I'm doing a discovery call with a
Hmm.
client is,
Okay.
one, do you want to be in an HOA? Because I would say most are like either hard yes or hard no.
I would agree.
You have something like indifferent that they don't care if they love the house, they'll do it.
Right.
When I speak to the lenders, I always ask, like, is this
Mhm.
payment including an HOA? And if so, what's their max? Because a lot of people
Correct.
don't, to your point, don't realize that's included in that number. So if
Hmm.
your max, monthly is $3,500 and you have an HOA, you have to factor that into your mortgage.
Correct.
And I think with HOAs now, I see it a lot up here in the Treasure Coast where they'll include like lawn care, irrigation. So I look at value for
Yes.
buyers, right? So
Agreed.
I just had a buyer looking at a home and I said, hey, listen, the HOA is a little higher, but it does your irrigation, your lawn, the common areas, the park, the pool. So it's, that's how
Well,
I look at it
and if you have to pay for all those things individually, it's not cheap. Like I
anymore.
don't live in an HOA. And so, when we hired someone to do our pool, that was $130 a month. And that
Yeah.
was just for basic service. And then my husband is constantly fixing all the stupid sprinklers for the irrigation. But if you
Yeah.
had to hire that, that's more money. I do mow my own lawn, but when I was looking at not mowing my own lawn, it was almost $200 a month. Right
Yeah.
there, you're up to $330 a month just in your basic maintenance.
And I think a lot of the HOAs cover, I would say basic, like your cable, if anyone watches cable anymore. It would be great if they included like Netflix or something.
Yeah. I know. That'd be more of an incentive now, right?
Exactly.
Netflix,
So
Hulu.
I would say everyone gets basic cable, basic internet, and then obviously you can upgrade from there. Like that's what we had done. But there's a lot of HOAs, obviously, I would say in Florida on the East Coast that I've run into. And I would say in like the Martin County area too, down here, we have most communities, I would say, are HOAs, especially towards the west side. It's hit or miss again. There's pros and cons. If you like a neighborhood to be very pristine and put together in uniform, I would say HOAs are probably the way to go.
I agree.
Because, I mean, listen, you can have, I've lived on non HOAs where we had a beautiful block and everyone took care of their home,
Right.
but you also take that risk of someone not
Someone,
mowing their yard for 6 months because they don't live here. And,
you mean like my neighbor?
yes, we have that.
So I'm not in an HOA, and my neighbor, they're wonderful people, but they're a busy family. They've got little kids and they don't mow their front yard that often. So the portion that butts up to mine, I just mow it for them.
Yeah.
'Cause all their weeds grow up and then it's weeds in
Goes
my
through your
lawn.
fence. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I just mow it for them. I'm like, eh.
Yeah.
So you're right.
And I think too, if for me personally, I like HOAs. I've always grown up in an HOA. I like these, I would say, sense of security because nothing's 100% right, but it gives you a little bit of a peace of mind. And I try to look at that with buyers as well. It's like, what's important to you in a neighborhood? What's important to you in a home? Like, if you want that community feel, sometimes the HOAs are the way to go because you have the clubhouse, you have the pool, you can do, interact with neighbors. I'm on the social committee in my neighborhood, so we do events throughout the year and stuff. So yeah, it's
Well, so
fun when you get to know.
if you were new, that would be a great way then to get to know people. If you're in a community that does have social events or things going on, 'cause it's a great way to meet your neighbors, right?
Absolutely, I've met so many neighbors through events that we've thrown.
Yeah, which is kind of fun. That's very
Yeah,
fun. Now, a year or so ago, NAR came out with this buyer broker agreement that, everybody kind of freaked out about. I think people are still kind of freaking out about it, to be quite honest. I mean, I don't think it's a big deal, but a lot of people still are talking about it. So what is this buyer broker agreement, and why should buyers feel secure signing it? I tell buyers I think it's a great thing to do. So can you explain what this buyer broker agreement is and what it does and does
yeah.
not?
So I think I have found for what works for me the best way to explain to buyers, especially I would say buyers who don't know me at all, right? Because it's easy if I know someone, they trust me, but someone who doesn't know me at all are gonna sign this document, essentially like marrying us together in a deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can be scary, and I think the biggest, I would say, challenge I've had with the BBAs is the part where it shows like our commission because it states like this is what you're agreeing to. But yeah, the buyer broker agreement is, I think it's beneficial for the buyer because it states like we're representing you. This is a contract that is putting us together. You're, agreeing to work with me solely, but I'm also agreeing, I would do it without a paper, but I'm agreeing to represent you in the best of my abilities in this transaction. And, even though in Florida we're transaction brokers, like I still look out what's best for my buyer and the transaction as a whole. But I think it's just the way it is presented. Obviously, I always hone in on this is a law now we have to have signed. Like
Correct.
you can get in trouble, get fines, potentially lose your license,
Hmm.
which I don't want to do.
Nope.
I've had I've had close people to me say, "Oh, do I really need to sign?" I'm like, absolutely. Like I told my brother, I was like, "Hey, you want to go see this house? You guys are gonna have to sign this paper, but I'm not risking that." I think it's a really good I think it's a good thing to a point. Obviously, I think what's even, I would say, beneficial to those who are kind of hesitant is you can make it property specific. So if
Yes.
someone doesn't want to commit to a 6-month contract with you, I can say, great, we'll do it for this period for this property. And then if you like me
That's
and
a
we get
really good that's a good idea, is to offer that, to offer a smaller segment, so
correct.
that people feel less like long-term committed. You're
Yeah. And
offering to date them for a while.
my opinion is the one thing I get pushback from is where it says like the buyer agrees, this is the commission. And I always explain to them what before I even explain what it is. In my opinion, nothing has changed in real estate
I
except for
agree.
paperwork, right? It's
I
paperwork.
agree.
So sellers are still compensating.
If
Now,
they want their houses sold, yes.
correct. Now, do I have a minimum, right? And I explain to them, hey, this is my price because you can adjust the agreement and go down, but you cannot adjust the agreement to go up. So if you sign, let's say at 3% and they're offering 2.5, I can adjust it. And I'm not the type of agent that will say, hey, you owe me the other half. I know a lot of agents do that. I just don't. I have a minimum, right? There is a bottom line. However, I have, knock on wood, yet to run into that, and I try to put my trust into my buyers. I do Zoom calls with them, or I'll do a call just like, hey, I am a human being. I am a
Yeah,
person.
I'm not a robot yeah.
I treat every buyer, seller, renter, anybody like as how I would want myself or my family members to be treated in a transaction. I'm not going to just treat you like a paycheck because that's not what I'm about. I'm not that
Nope.
type of person.
Nope.
And I think I've seen the good and the bad of this buyer broker agreement with agents.
Yeah.
I think it shows the ones who, like, for me, I truly love what I do. And I believe it's all
Agreed.
building relationships and getting the trust in people because anybody can technically sell their home, right? But you're putting one of the largest purchases of your life in the hands of someone you might not even know. Like, you might just
Correct.
know from my Instagram, my Facebook, and what you've read on my Google review.
Right.
It's, it's a lot. I think it's a lot of responsibility, and you have to be very upfront and honest with your buyers. I've had agents lose homes for their buyers because they're not getting the compensation, which I personally don't agree with. I think that's not what we're in this business for. And
I agree.
prior to August 17th, 2024, you didn't have
You
that.
even know the date. You're good.
I had that date in my spiel when I talk about this because
Yeah,
and there was a lot of like news about it
it was.
up until we got it. And it was a
Yeah.
lot to digest. But I think once you get the rhythm,
Yes.
it's so much, it's just easy to explain and be truthful. Like, that's all.
It's transparency, right? Good agents were transparent anyways.
Yeah.
And I personally think that it debunks a little bit of what people think that realtors really make when, you explain, hey, my broker takes, so that's the number. Yes, but my broker takes XYZ% of that, and then
That is something that I think I've had more people than I like to admit make comments of, I would say, what they think realtors do in general, right? I
right.
don't just open doors and collect paychecks. Like,
No.
I have been people's therapist. I have been a shoulder to cry on. I will
Yes.
be like
Yep.
your chef. I've cleaned
Yeah.
garage. Like, I've done everything,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
I think it's so important too to be transparent to your point, to say like, hey, yeah, you might be paying me 3%,
Hmm.
right? But
Yeah.
I'm only getting 1% of that at the end of the day after
Correct.
splits, taxes, fees, broker fees, everything else.
Yep.
And
Yeah. Pictures. If you're the listing agent,
you have
the
expenses.
photographs, those are not cheap.
No, marketing's not cheap,
Nope.
you know.
Nope. No, none of it is. Absolutely. So, what advice would you give to a first time home buyer that isn't sure if they're ready to enter into the buying market? So, what would the process be with you to walk them through whether they should proceed and buy? What's your, like, how do you
So
do
I
that?
always ask the why, like, what makes you want to move? Like,
Okay.
why do you want to move? Are you happy with maybe something happened with the landlord, whatever the case is? I just closed this week a first time home buyer. And when I first started working with him, I asked him, I said, why do you want to move? And he was a very financially savvy guy. And he's like,
Okay. Good.
I'm ready to move. And you realize you're paying yourself, you're building equity, you're building wealth for yourself and your future. What I like to do is I like to do it in a Zoom call or in person, depending on where we're at, and go over the steps, right? And I will tell them this is a lot. Like, it's a roller
Yes.
coaster. It's a lot of hurry up and wait, right?
Yes. And
For you to have
emotions.
breath. And I'm very transparent with that. Like, this is going to be stressful. My job is as least stressful for you as possible.
Yeah.
And I always say, give me a needs and a wants. Like,
Yes.
I need a needs list and a wants list, and then your dream scenario,
Right.
because that's how I shop for buyers. Is I'll say, hey, this has everything you're looking for structurally, right? Like, on the MLS, unfortunately, you cannot, search, does the kitchen have white shaker cabinets with black
Right. Right.
handles?
No. No.
So it's more structure. And then I always say, shop the structure and the land. You can edit a house. You cannot sometimes
Correct.
edit the property itself, and you
Right.
can't build more land. So look at what's important in the big picture. You can build a
Correct.
pool. You can
Yep.
edit a bathroom. You can redo a kitchen, your floor. Yes, it takes money, but once you have that home, you can do whatever you want. And I think it's
Correct.
just being realistic and realistic with price. And I feel like with first time home buyers, the
That's the
pricing is,
hardest part.
yeah,
Yes.
because I've seen both sides, right? Where it's I only can afford X amount, but they really can do more, but maybe they
Yeah.
don't want to. And that's what I always say. Pre-approvals are the number one thing
Mhm.
I will tell first time home buyers. Before we even talk about home, I need to know
Yeah.
where you're looking and then what
Yes.
your pre-approval is. Because
Correct.
sometimes, and I see this a lot too with people from out of state, the price points are very unrealistic because as you know, Florida has gotten quite expensive to buy a home.
Yes, and people are thinking Florida from 10 years ago,
Correct.
not current Florida, especially with taxes and the value of the homes.
Yeah, it's I mean, I just know where we live in Martin County, the average price point has gone up significantly since we moved in 3 years ago. So not
Sure.
even that all that long ago. Everything's going up. So I think it's being transparent, being realistic. And then for me, being an agent, I would say getting creative and I like to think outside of the box.
I do too. I do too.
Yeah. So if someone's looking, let's say they want to be in Martin County, but their budget's not getting them exactly what they need, I might say, "Hey, listen, let's look at other areas in Martin County if you want to be, or look right over the border in St. Lucie and it'll get you what you want. You'll get more bang for your buck or whatever the case is." But I think just being transparent with
I
first time home
agree.
buyers is the
I
biggest
agree.
thing.
And I find a lot of them start out with like, oh, I want a $2,000 a month payment, this a little payment. And I'm like, okay, then this is what you need to look for in a house. And so then I send them out and I know that they really qualify for more. So I always let the realtor know, let them know, hey, you can go up in budget if you're not finding anything that you like in this price range.
Mhm.
But I feel like there's a whole process with them, right? To kind of decide, okay, so I really can't find anything at this lower range that I like. So maybe let's bump it up. Let's see what the next level is and see if I can find something that I like in that level. I find it's
Absolutely.
really is kind of a process of them just looking at all kinds of different things to decide what it is that they really want, which is
Definitely.
a good thing, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So I would have to say that we are going to remind everybody to like, subscribe. If you like this kind of content, make sure that you are telling other people about this podcast. Like, subscribe, and it puts my content out to other people who may want to know more information about buying homes in Florida. So if this is valuable to you, make sure that you're doing that. So next question before we wrap things up, which is seller concessions. So what's happening with seller concessions? So just so everybody knows what a seller concession is where the seller offers money back towards closing costs for the buyers. So Alyssa, are we seeing a lot of those? What are you seeing in your area of the market?
Definitely seller concessions are a huge thing right now. I think most, if not almost all my deals, whether I'm on the list or the buy side, have some sort of seller concessions, whether it's right in the beginning of the contract or during inspection period. I think the inspection period is probably the most common one.
Yeah.
At least for me, like most of my buyers will ask for a seller concession and take care
Hmm.
of something they need to
Right.
before asking the seller to fix it. But I think it's really smart. I work very closely with all the lenders on my buy
Hmm.
side to
Yeah.
say, hey, do they need seller concessions? Will it help them? Like, how much are we
Right.
talking? And knowing this is huge too, is knowing your max seller concession for the deal per the type of loan you
Yes,
have.
you have correct because that's a big deal. Every loan type has a rule about that
Yes.
seller
So
concession.
I had someone offer something on my property once and it was 4 or 5% higher than the max. And I had to call the agent and be like, yeah, this is not correct. Like this isn't
No.
right. And we came to an agreement and got through it. But I think seller concessions is very smart and talking to your buyers too. Like, do you
Yeah.
want, I've had buyers say, I do not want any seller concessions. I just care about the bottom line. And it's totally fine. I still educate them for the
Mhm.
pros on both. But
Yeah.
I think it just comes down to, again, communication. Communication in this business is key, no matter what side you're
100%.
on.
Yep.
And I think having an open line of communication with the lender, I
Yes.
think huge. Like you and I did a
Well, it's
deal together.
imperative. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
imperative.
And you were great with communication. And I
Thank
think
you.
it keeps it keeps the deal going.
Yes. And
It,
take some of the stress out of it when the agents can work together, the lender can work together, it makes things get pushed through. I mean, there's 42 steps that happen in the background once you sign a purchase contract. So there's 42 things that happen that the buyer and seller are almost completely unaware of.
yeah,
There's a few of those steps they have to be involved in, but there's a lot that happens. And so those of us who are part of the transaction really do have to work together. And that's where people come to me sometimes and think that they want to try and buy on their own or sell on their own. And I strongly discourage that just because who is helping them through that transaction? What happens if I'm the lender is I end up helping them and I'm not a licensed realtor. And I don't want to be part, that part of the transaction. My part is the financial part of the transaction.
right.
So, so I always highly encourage people, to get a realtor for that. Have you done any of the hometown heroes? Have you been through a hometown hero
I have.
purchase yet? You have. Okay, awesome. Did you know that there's still money for that this year?
I do. And I really, I, I have to say, I like that they went back to the original Hometown Heroes versus when they opened it up to everybody. It
Right.
was great. I think that was great, but
But the money went in 2.2.
correct. And I think for what it represented, I think especially like, listen, I'm a first responder wife. We're a first
Yeah.
responder family. I like that it was something for first responders, military, teachers. Like I liked that. I thought that was a huge thing, especially for first time home buyers, you know? And if
Yeah,
you're
and
VA,
5% back,
yeah, that's huge.
5% towards your closing costs. That is huge. I had a VA buyer that was VA. Currently he was a fireman. And so we did a VA loan. He literally got $1,000 back at closing.
Yeah, I think it's a great program, especially, obviously you have to be a first time home buyer. I think the 3 years you can't have
Since
owned a
you
home.
own,
So I
unless you're a veteran, if you're a veteran, you do
right,
not have to be a first time home buyer, which is kind of
correct.
amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. I had someone who was looking into it and he opted out for his personal reasons, but I've had clients purchase with it and it's great, especially given the price point that Florida has gotten, it puts a little more money in your pocket and feels you a little more secure. And I think those buyers who are VA with the hometown heroes, like that's a perfect scenario right there.
I 100% agree. And I always tell people that want to use hometown heroes, I said, let's look at using hometown heroes. So we'll keep that option over here and keep it open. But let's also look and see if you find a property that's been on the market for a long time, where if you're doing an FHA loan, that they'll give you can give you up to 6% back in concessions. And then you don't ever owe that money back.
Correct.
So, hometown heroes, if you sell the house, if you refinance the house, or at the end of
And
30 years, you
yeah,
owe that money back to the program for the next people, which
correct.
is fair. And, there's no interest accumulating on that. But recently I've been like, well, let's see if we can get the seller to give you 6%. And if the seller will, or 5%, then there's no need to do the program because you can just get the money and not owe that money back if you ever sell or refinance. So I
Right.
almost think that that's why the program hasn't run out of money so quickly between them narrowing down who can actually use the program again.
Yeah, I
And
think that was
then the seller concessions, people, don't necessarily need it if they can find a house that gives the seller concessions. So,
right.
yeah. So, which is good. Okie dokie. So we are wrapping this show up and I appreciate everybody who has tuned in. If you found this helpful, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us reach more buyers who need real guidance, not clickbait. So Alyssa and I both are in the business of helping people and genuinely helping people, not just looking at people as paychecks. So if you're planning on buying soon, or if you want to know what you qualify for, I would love to put some numbers together. And I do all of that complimentary. Neither one of us get paid until the end of a transaction. So we
Yeah.
speak to lots of people for free every single day. So if you're thinking about buying, if you're thinking about selling, please reach out to us. Even if you're a seller and you are not sure that you're going to need a mortgage for the next place, reach out to me. I can run the numbers. and let you know where you're at, how much of the proceeds you're actually going to get from your house if it sells at a certain dollar amount. And then Alyssa tells you what reality is and whether you can sell that house for that. To contact me, I'm Jennifer Fanning, and my direct office number is 561-295-2005. You can text or you can call that number. And thanks for listening today. And remember, don't get ducked by another lender. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks so much.